Okay, this is my first YouTube video, and forgive me if it's a little bit weird. It's actually my second time doing this because I didn't have the sound or the right microphone on last time I did it, so sorry if I'm a little bit rushed doing it the second time. Anyway, I just wanted to make a response to the video by, I think her name is Dai Query Kiss or something like that. She does like Japanese lessons, I guess, online. She was talking about the difference between wa and ga, the subject markers, the subject particle. And I didn't really like her description or whatever. I didn't think it would really help anyone that was a beginner. So I wanted to just give a description or an explanation that hopefully would be more helpful to beginners and to anybody really that I think wants to study Japanese, is studying on their own, or even is studying in a class and just having a hard time understanding the difference. Just so you know, I've been studying Japanese for 5 years. I lived there for 3 years, so I'm not just speaking out of no experience. And I passed the N1 level, which is the new highest level of the Japanese language proficiency test, if that means anything, which probably really is not that great of a thing, but there you go. So I have some sort of certificate showing that I know Japanese. Anyway, so I just wanted to explain using classical Japanese because I thought that it would be, if we go through classical Japanese, I thought it'd make it easier to understand the differences. So just real quick explanation here, and this is from a book. It's called Classical Japanese Grammar by Haruo Shirane. Very good book, by the way, if you already know modern Japanese and you want to study classical Japanese. So what difference we have here is wa and ga are two different kinds of particles in classical Japanese, which I think carries on to modern Japanese in some aspects, right? Even though we don't describe it the same way. And in classical Japanese, according to Shirane, wa is what's called a bound particle. And he describes one thing bound particles do is they emphasize, which is an important part of wa and an important part of the difference, right, between wa and ga. So what he says here is, he says wa is used to single things out and to make distinctions, and under the functions he has its topic marker as far as singling things out and making descriptions. And it's distinction and emphasis particle, and it's a parallel comparison particle, which I think is important because the girl that I'm responding to here, she said that most of the time you almost never see two was in a sentence, which it might not be like something that happens all the time, but it's important to know that you do. And usually, well, lots of times when you do use two was in a sentence, it's when you're making a parallel comparison. You're comparing two things, like saying A is not B, but C is B, or something like that, if that makes any sense to you. So you're saying that one thing is not A, but something else is A. So you're using wa on both subjects in that case, is one way that you use it sometimes. So that's wa. And then what he says about ga is what's called a case particle. And what case particles do is they simply attach on to words, to nouns usually, or relative clauses or whatever, to tell you their function in a sentence. So for ga, the case particle ga basically tells you that the word or the noun that it's attached to is the subject of a verb, usually of the following verb, or sometimes of the verb at the end of the sentence, or whatever. But some verb in that sentence, that ga belongs to the verb in the sentence, or the word attached to the ga belongs to the verb, a verb in the sentence. So basically ga has no nuance. It's like o and ni are also case particles, and they basically tell you the function of a word in a sentence. they don't make any sort of nuance or suggestion about the word that they're attached to, other than what if, how it relates to a verb or to another word, a noun or an adjective or something. And Ga is the same way. So Ga is neutral, and all it's telling you is the word that it's attached to is the subject of a verb. And now we're not going to talk about the Ga that goes with potential, because sometimes you can use Ga as or oftentimes even you can use Ga as a potential, as a object marker for potential verbs, or verbs that are in the potential. And you can also use it. You also use it for other words like wakaru. You use Ga for whatever it is that you wakaru, right? And stuff like that. Okay, so wa is basically, well, before we talk about wa, let's talk about mo, because I think pretty much everyone that studies Japanese understands pretty simply the function of mo. It just means also. You're adding something into the sentence, or you're adding a subject in with the verb, right? So like watashi mo iku means I also will go, right? So the implication there, all I said is I also will go, right? It's the same in English, but the implication is that other people are going also, right? In Japanese, the only subject mentioned is me, or is I, but the implication is that there's other people, right? Because of mo. Mo tells us that. It tells us that the word that's attached to is included with other subjects. So mo is inclusive. Which I believe also in classical Japanese, it is a bound particle. Let me just jump. Yes, it is also a bound particle, like wa, because it tells you something about the word that's attached to, other than its function in the sentence. And so mo is inclusive. So I think if you think of it like this, it really helps. And this is a way a teacher that when I was going to university in Japan explained it to me. I explained it to the class, and I think it really makes it simple. Ga is neutral. It's black and white. It tells you factual things, and just that the word that's attached to is a subject of a verb. Mo adds color to the sentence because it puts nuance and tells you it pluses, right? So Ga is neutral, mo is plus. For example, I just forgot what I was gonna say, but well, so you have those two, right? You have the neutral and you have the plus. So then you also have to have minus, and wa is where it's the minus. And so, like for example, if I use wa, it minuses. It doesn't minus the thing that it's attached to. It minuses everything else, right? It's like mo adds. It doesn't add the thing that it's attached to necessarily. It adds other subjects to the mo. Like for example, Japanese people sometimes they'll say things like they'll use mo, even though no one else or no other subject is doing something, or something like that. They'll use mo sort of to give a sort of inclusive sort of feeling, like, and so it's not necessarily literal also all the time. And wa is the same way. It's sort of like it creates a sort of feeling or a nuance that the subject, the noun that it's attached to, the subject that it's attached to, is different. It's minused from things around it, which is why I think oftentimes they use it. They say that it's used when you change a subject, or when you're introducing a new subject, right? Because it's minusing the previous understood subject from the subject, or it's distinguishing what you're talking about now from what you were talking about before. Okay, so basically, here's an example. I think that will make it hopefully make it easy to understand. If you're a guy and you're dating a Japanese girl, and she says something like, my nose is funny, or Japanese women say things about their eyes all the time, or their nose all the time, right? Say she says something about her ears. She says her ears are ugly or something like that, right? And you tell her, mimi ga kirei da. Or I'm sorry, not mimi ga kirei. You tell her mimi wa kirei da. You tell her mimi wa kirei da. She'll probably get mad at you. She might not, especially since you're a gaijin, and she might give you the benefit of the doubt there. But she might get mad at you because the implication there is you're minusing. So her ears are the thing. As for your ears, is the way they often translate it. They're pretty, they're nice, but you're minusing it. It's a minus. So everything else, the implication is that other parts of her are not necessarily pretty, right? So if you just wanted to say if you just want to say your ears are pretty neutrally, you just say mimi ga kirei da. Mimi ga kirei da. Your ears are pretty. That's all that means. It doesn't, not saying anything else about her or the other parts of her, right? But the best thing to say, the smooth thing to say, I guess you would say, is mimi mo kirei da. So mimi mo kirei da yo, or something like that. I don't know, but use mo, and because the implication there is your ears are pretty, but so is other parts of your your eyes and your nose and your are pretty too, or something like that. So in that situation, definitely don't use wa. Not a good idea. I can promise you. But I hope that makes it easy. That sort of clears up some differences of the difference between the two. And just remember, mo is plus, ga is neutral, and wa is minus. And a lot of times wa and ka you can use in the same, you can use them interchangeably, and it doesn't really change the meaning of the sentence at all. So I wouldn't really worry about it that much. But hopefully what I said helps you out. If you really, I don't have the book with me right now. It's actually in a box that's traveling over the Pacific Ocean. But it's you get by the Japan Times, a dictionary of basic Japanese grammar, and that gives you examples and explains pretty well the differences between the two. Also, if you want some specifics and things like that, so I would get that. It's got a yellow jacket. It's a pretty good book, especially for beginners, I think, to help you understand grammar. Anyway, if you have any questions, or if what I said didn't make any sense at all and you want to ask something, or tell me that it didn't make any sense, that's fine. Leave me a response and I'll try and answer you or help you out or whatever. So yeah, thank you.